I want grades to reflect learning. I want students to be able to say, oh, I know what I need to do. I know what learning I need to show my teacher to be successful in this class, as opposed to what fistful of paper can I turn in right now to get my grade to a B.
This is High Tech High Unboxed. I'm Alec Patton, and that was the voice of Sunny Chan, a math teacher at Fremont High School in Oakland, California. I spoke to Sunny along with Sandy Tu, who also teaches math at Fremont, and Amanda Meyer, who's a 9th grade on-track and improvement coach in the Breakthrough Success community. The Breakthrough Success community is a 45-school improvement network focused on improving 9th grade on-track across California. Fremont has been a part of the Breakthrough Success community since it launched in 2019. I wanted to talk to Sunny, Sandy, and Amanda because since 2019, Fremont High School has been very successful at improving 9th grade on-track rates. You're going to hear two remarkable statistics in just a moment. But first, a special announcement. We're talking today about how a school is using continuous improvement to make a tangible difference in the lives of their students. If you want to connect with people from across the country who are doing cool stuff like this, there's only one place you want to be from March 30th to April 1st, 2026, and that is San Diego, California, for the National Summit on Improvement in Education. In fact, Amanda Meyer from this very episode is going to be there talking about Breakthrough Success Community's work on 9th grade on-track in Oakland. Book your spot today while you still can. We've got a link in the show notes. Now it's time for statistics. Are you ready? Here they are. We'll start with the percentage of 9th graders on track to graduate high school and be college ready. In 2018, only 44% of 9th graders at Fremont were on track. Last year, that percentage was up to 61%. That is a 39% increase. One of the ways that Fremont helped more kids get on track was by focusing on one famously challenging class, algebra. In 2018, the D and F rate for 9th graders in algebra was a whopping 50%. That's right, half the kids were failing algebra. Last year, it was down to 26%. So how did Fremont cut their algebra D and F rate nearly in half? Well, Sunny already told you the short version right at the top of the episode. The teachers changed their grading so that it reflected learning. But the story of how they got there is where it gets interesting. To begin, let's set the baseline. Here's how Sunny and Sandy were doing grading back in 2018 before Fremont High School joined the Breakthrough Success community.
Typically, every week I would have some assignments. They would do their assignments, turn it in, and that would be 100 points for the week. And then every week we would have a quiz. They would do the quiz, they would turn it in to me, I grade it out of 100, and I would give it back to them. So in 1 week, they would have 200 points, 100 points from the work, and 100 points from the quiz. And that would be their grade.
And Sandy, is that how you were doing it too?
I think back in 2018, I was still doing some weighting, and I was trying to make assessment weight like 60% and assignments weight 40%. And yet the assessments didn't come as regularly as the percent suggests. I kind of wait for the right opportunity, maybe like at the end of a unit to do an assessment. And so in the Gradebook, the kids just didn't see it, didn't get what's going on with it.
So that's how grading in algebra happened at Fremont High School in the before times. Then in 2019, the Breakthrough Success community kicked off by inviting all the schools to a 2-day launch event at a waterfront hotel in Oakland. But Fremont High School couldn't get sub coverage for the teachers, so they couldn't come until day 2, after the school day was over. That is, Sandy and her colleagues showed up for the end of day 2 of a 2-day launch event. As you can imagine, this was not an ideal way to start this collaboration. Here's Sandy.
We just joined in after we've been teaching all day, been teaching for 6 hours. And when we joined in, I think they were doing an activity that transitioned to another topic. And I think that was just a really bad first impression. Like it was, we're just tired already. And now you're having us do this silly activity that is not like substantive yet.
We were playing a PDSA game, I think. I think we were playing Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, they had somebody dressed as Mr. Potato Head and just like peeked in from a window or something. And then somebody said, okay, so now we're going to build Mr. Potato and let's see how you do with the time constraint. And this is after us like being prompted to bring our ninth grade picture to share with each other. So just a lot of like, okay, getting to know each other. But again, we've had a long day. We came in maybe expecting some strategy that we could try the next day. And this is what we got.
So that's your first impression.
I feel like that's a really accurate first impression that probably many folks have when they join an improvement network, because they think that they're coming to a training. They think they're going to get a program that they can take back and implement. And I think one of the things that really was an adjustment for our collaboration was that we're not necessarily giving you things that we think should be done. We're here to help you figure out how to improve your own work in your own school. And I think sometimes at the beginning that can be really unsatisfying for people.
I don't know if we told you this before, Amanda, but after that, we weren't over it, clearly, because there was a group chat saying, what was that about? Why did we do this thing? Why did we waste our time?
So half the kids taking algebra were failing at this point.
D's or F's, right? It wasn't just F's.
Yeah, D's or F's. Was that something that was like weighing on you, or did that feel like, well, that's just what algebra is?
I would think so. Like we were using the Jupiter Grades online gradebook, and what they have on there is a bar graph at the bottom, and it shows us bars for each grade. And it was just ugly to see just it's being skewed right, where the F and D's are. And I just wonder, like, does it always have to be that way? Like, kids don't like math and kids also don't know how to do math.
Sunny, how are you thinking about it at that point?
I mean, I think if you think too hard about it, it's really depressing. But I think what teachers do is that they say, oh, look, half my kids are failing, but I'm really giving them every opportunity. It's on them. The ball's in their court. They need to do this and they need to do this. So as a teacher, sometimes we default to that.
Amanda, how were you thinking about it when you saw the numbers at Fremont?
As an on-track coach and improvement coach, I'm always looking at the data and I'm thinking about where we're seeing variation and where we might be able to make an impact. So kind of from the beginning, as soon as we had access to the data from OUSD and from Fremont, I was looking for patterns and seeing where were students struggling, which students were struggling. And it was really clear to me that algebra was a pain point for this community. And it was something that I knew we might take some time to work on. It wasn't something we were going to tackle right at the outset. But, I remember pretty early on, we were in a ninth grade team meeting, and Sandy and Jane, the other ninth grade team lead, were bringing some grading strategies to the team, just some initial kind of early things that they might try. And I remember that Sunny was sitting in the back of the room, kind of on his laptop, multitasking, getting things done. And when we started talking about these grading strategies, he kind of lifted his head up and started paying attention. And it turned out he had very strong opinions about how grading should be done. And that launched the beginning of a really awesome conversation where we started exchanging resources. He offered to show me how he was grading. He was really passionate about his 200 points a week system, and there was a lot of really logical benefits to it. So he was showing me how that worked. I shared with him some resources around grading, and it was just kind of like, as we saw each other from time to time, we would have little conversations. And I was really excited by his enthusiasm because I knew in the back of my mind that algebra was a gatekeeper course in a lot of ways for students at Fremont. It was a place where more students struggled than many other core content courses. So if we could really start to collaborate around student success in algebra, it would be amazing and have a really big impact on students. And I knew that Sunny would be a critical person to have in the conversation. So seeing him really step into leadership around grading, I think, has been an incredible part of Fremont's story.
We're going to get to Sunny in a minute, but you really glossed over a thing that I want to bring out here, which is that we suddenly went from Sandy being sarcastic on the group chat to Sandy bringing grading strategies to the ninth grade team meeting. Sandy, what happened?
I really appreciate Amanda being persistent with us because I value persistence myself. And some of the strategies that CORE has brought was gradebook review. Gradebook review was one of the things we did in our ninth grade team just to try it out. And of course, we, Fremont, we're not just going to try out the way we want to try it out. We are going to look through it and find ways to enhance it or to revise the protocol.
And what is a gradebook review?
It's a way for teachers to look at every student who currently has a D or an F in their class. What is the primary root cause for that? Is it that they failed assessments? Is it that they're missing some assignments? Is that they haven't done homework? And by kind of looking for patterns in the root causes of why students are struggling, we not only come up with some ideas for how we might support those students, but it also ideally makes us reflect on what we're grading and why. So I'm pretty sure Fremont started with that gradebook review, and some of the strategies that the Breakthrough Success community was recommending at the time were things like, well, if you're having students with a lot of D's and F's, you might consider doing a 50% floor or minimum grading, where you set the bottom of your grading scale at 50 rather than 0%, as a way to make the grading scale more proportionate instead of being disproportionately weighted towards failure. So I think we started with 50% floor. We probably talked about having makeup days where we make space during class time to guide students to complete some of their missing work. Those are some of the early ideas that I'm pretty sure Sandy and Jane were bringing to the Fremont team when Sunny was sitting in the back of the room with an eyebrow up.
Do you remember this, Sunny? Do you remember this meeting?
No, but it sounds like what I would do. It tracks. I mean, generally, the team brought back strategies, and I did not like them. So I would complain a lot. I'm a complainer in general. So I would complain to Amanda, I would complain to Sandy, whoever would listen, that I did not like these strategies and explain why. And over time, we just had more and more conversations about why I did not like them.
Why didn't you like them?
Specifically, the minimum grading. It's really the communication that provides to the student. What does that tell the student? If I were a student and I saw an assignment, I got a 50%, I would say, oh, I did that. I didn't do well, but I did it. And I think that parents would think the same. Oh, you tried, but you didn't do very well. But in reality, the student didn't do it. And I think that communicates the wrong thing.
What do you mean they didn't do it?
So with minimum grading, if a student does not do an assignment, they automatically get a 50%.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, I got it.
So a student who does really poorly on an assignment gets the same score as a student who did not even do the assignment, which is the 50%.
But the theory behind minimum grading is right now, if we're giving zeros for everything that a student hasn't turned in yet, we are letting them dig a very big hole that becomes mathematically very difficult to get out of, because of how so much of the grading scale is an F. So by adjusting the grading scale to make it more proportional, we make it mathematically easier for students to get within striking distance of passing, which makes so much sense. But, practically speaking, the 50% floor model does push up against some, challenges with communication and kind of the mental models that people hold about what grades mean.
How do you feel about the 50% minimum now, Sonny?
Oh, I still don't like it.
Yeah, I was picking up on that. All right, so you start having these discussions. You're complaining to anyone who will listen, as you put it.
Yes.
And so what happened?
And so I kept complaining. Amanda gave me books to read, and I read some of them. And then they asked me to join the team. And I was like, what? Why would you do this? So I joined the team. Then they had a conference somewhere where they flew us out and had a hotel. And it was really nice. I was really surprised. And I went to this conference. And I'm like, I'm going to find somebody to convince me that minimum grading is good. That's what I was looking for when I went to that conference. And so at the conference, I listened, I asked questions, and nobody convinced me. And I was like even more determined in my thought that this is not going to work for me.
So whatever got the DNF rate from 50% to 26%, it was not Sunny getting stoked about minimum grading.
It was Sunny getting unstoked about minimum grading. So I started looking at student gradebooks from the student point of view. We have advisory in our school, so it's basically like we help students navigate their grades in their school, especially in ninth grade. It's really important. A lot of times when I would look at the student gradebooks, I'd be like, hey, Bobby, let's look at your grades. And I would try to help them figure out what they need to improve. It was often really difficult to figure out what to improve because the gradebooks were all over the place. It was really hard to provide any feedback to the students other than go complete your work. And so I was like, is this really common? Are all students experiencing this? So what I did was I went in a lot of gradebooks with the lens of, is a 50% floor going to help this? If we made everybody do a 50% floor, would these grades improve? And when I looked at it, I was like, no, it wouldn't. There's other issues other than minimum grading that we need to solve first.
And what were those issues?
Gradebooks, a lot of them just didn't make sense. Some teachers don't update their gradebooks on time. So some kids, I'm like, I don't know what you need to do because there's nothing there. And then sometimes it's the things are vague. And sometimes the assignments are listed very quote unquote clearly, but I asked the student and they're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know where to find it. And then some assignments were like, this, you just got credit for turning this in. And then we had tests that they bombed that brought their grades down. I'm like, I don't know how to advise students to fix that. And it was just overall confusing. Even though minimum grade would make some of the math easier, a lot of the math in the gradebook was just confusing.
It's almost like an empathy interview. Like you're sitting down with a student and you're looking at it from the student perspective. You're talking to the student about it. You're getting the student to share with you, and you're going like, man, well, you're confused. I'm confused. Sandy, were you feeling this way too?
Well, as I mentioned before, when we did like the weighting, it just felt really lopsided, like what's on the grade book and what the students are experiencing. I'm pretty sure it's not just me, but like other teachers who have, for example, like a 60 to 80% weight on an assessment. And yet sometimes that assessment just comes once in the marking period. So as what Sunny said, when you advise a student and you have like this long list of assignments that, for example, have all A's on it, and yet with one F on the assessment, like that just tanked your grade. Now your overall grade is a C or a D. And it's just, wow, that's the only assessment that mattered at that point.
One thing I'd love to highlight about what Sunny and Sandy just shared is that I think that we found at Fremont and at other schools doing ninth grade on track work in our community is that when teachers become consumers of their own gradebook data, it can be really powerful. By looking at the outputs of gradebooks from the perspective of an advisor, trying to help a student make sense of their performance and decide what they might need to do to improve their grades, it really helps teachers create, I think, have like you said, Alec, much greater empathy for students and families, and to really reveal like how confusing some of our gradebooks can be if we're trying to use that as an effective communication tool and learning tool for students. And I think a lot of the grading work that Sunny has done, and he's designed all of these different activities and discussion prompts and exercises that he's done with his team to kind of reveal this variation. It really stems from a place of like, our gradebooks are not just for our students or for their families to receive updates. Our gradebooks are for us too, to be able to make decisions about how we're supporting students as advisors, but also students in our own classrooms.
So tell me about that. Tell me about what you did.
So I designed an activity where I took screenshots of student grades. I took one student, I took screenshots of the grades, blocked out the grades, and had the teachers talk about what grade do you think this student has. So we were guessing the student grades. And the second question was, what would you do to advise this student? And sort of the third question is, what's confusing about this? And when we looked at the grades, when the teachers got together and looked at the grades, there was a lot of confusion. There was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And to spoil it a little bit, the 6 grades we looked at were all Ds, but they all look really different. And so it's really hard to understand it when all the grades look so different from teacher to teacher to teacher.
That's super smart as an activity.
Yeah, I share it with everybody I can.
What was the mood of the teacher team coming out of that?
I think the teachers were confronted with a puzzle. Like, this is confusing. This happens, and I understand it, but I don't know what to do about it. I think that was the mood that came out. A teacher told me after I did this activity, that was like the most we've ever talked about grading. And I always tell people, we had allotted a certain amount of time for that, and we went like 45 minutes over, but nobody complained. Like, teachers hate PD, but we went over and nobody complained, and people were still engaged. So I was really happy about that people were making sense or trying to make sense of these grade books.
Sandy, were you there for that?
Yeah, I was there for that. It was a Saturday.
What?
Yeah, we work on Saturdays.
Wow.
Again, like Sunny said, we were just allotting like a certain amount of time for it, and we definitely went over. And as you were telling that story, Sunny, I was thinking about that quote you got from like the Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. Do you still remember it?
Yeah.
What is it?
Ideas have to cause problems before they cause solutions.
And I think like during this like Saturday session, people were, what got put in front of them was, something that is causing problems. And so it really got us to thinking about it. And I'm really glad that we did it. And I think, Sunny, you've probably done it a few more times with different subgroups. Coming out of that, I think the next thing we said was let's bring this to the entire team, not just the people who wanted to show up on a Saturday.
So your ideas cause problems.
Oh, yeah.
How'd you get to solutions?
That's a great question. So based on the gradebooks that I had presented, I had some suggestions. I was like, you should do this. You should do this. Clarify your assignment titles. Like, don't use weighted grading or make them more consistent. Now that I think about those things, I was trying to band-aid things. Those were little things to fix little things to make it easier for advisors to understand it. But now I know that it requires more change. Like you said earlier, it's a multitude of things. It's not just this thing or this thing is this thing. It's a really big shift in thinking about how you're grading.
And I don't remember if our third math teacher was there at that meeting. She was also part of the ninth grade team. But it was really helpful that all three Algebra 1 teacher was in the ninth grade team. And at some point after that Saturday meeting, we got together again with another fellow math teacher to examine our grade books even more. And I think that's what kind of led to the changes that we've made in our grade books.
I think one framework that's really helpful for thinking about the kinds of changes that the Fremont team has implemented in their grading is the one posed by Joe Feldman in his work on equitable grading. There's lots of different ways to think about it, but one framework is that if we want grades to be more meaningful reflections of student learning, we need to make them more accurate, more motivational, and more bias resistant. So I think a lot of the things that the Fremont team has implemented address one of those areas. We want to make sure that grades are actually showing accurate depictions of what students know and are able to do, not just their compliance or their ability to turn it into a worksheet. We want to make sure that the grades are motivational, that they're set up in a way that makes students feel like their hard work will pay off and that they can still catch up even if they fall behind. And then also bias resistant. So we really look hard at if we're grading things like homework and participation, which are really more measures of other aspects of a student's life than what they know and are able to do in our content area. So yeah, thinking about like how can we make our grading system more accurate, motivational, and bias resistant? A lot of the things the Fremont team has tried fit in one of those categories.
And Sunny, it sounds like you thought you had the answer and you didn't to begin with.
For sure. I thought I had some first steps to how we could improve gradebooks, but some of them didn't take. And then when I saw some teachers do the changes, I was like, this is not producing the result that I had intended. And as I looked at more gradebooks, I just was like frustrated because I was like, what exactly is it that I want? And over time, it's just that's been changing, and I've been trying to figure it out. What change do I want?
What change do you want?
I want grades to reflect learning. And I want to be an advisory teacher who can be like, hey, you need to go learn this. I want students to be able to say, I know what learning I need to show my teacher to be successful in this class, as opposed to what fistful of paper can I turn in right now to get my grade to a B.
Yeah, I've often said like grading is the thing that happens at the same time as assessment, but it's often not an assessment tool. It's an accountability tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of like kids going, oh, this grade is bad, so you need to do this work or turn this thing in order to get that. But it's not, as you say, it's not telling you, oh, there's a certain number of concepts that you really need to understand in algebra in order to achieve the level of mastery that lets us know that you can go to the next class. And I can see that you're missing this concept, this concept, this concept.
Right.
So how did you start redesigning grading so that it was an indicator of learning?
So for me personally, like I said earlier, my quizzes were the 100 points. And students got a quiz, they got an 87, whatever that means. They got a 63, whatever that means. So from that, I shifted I still had a quiz a week, but the quiz would be broken down into 3 parts. The 3 things that I really, really wanted the kids to like take away from that week, and each would get an individual grade. But it's not 100 to 0 anymore. It's just A, B, C, D, F, so that the kids would understand. Oh, look, I'm at this level. I'm at this level. Don't worry about the numbers. So yeah, basically, my quizzes were broken down into learning targets, so that in any particular week, a student can go, "Oh, I learned that this week," or "I did not learn that this week. That's what I need to work on."
Were other people adopting that, or is this just a you thing?
So, like Sandy said, the Algebra 1 team was really solid. I don't know how we managed that, but we really worked together when we all agreed to every week to give some kind of quizzes where we had learning targets and the students would know what they learned.
And did you see a shift?
It's hard to say what shift we saw in the students right away, but I definitely felt a shift for me. And I think it helped us in planning because we were like, what did the kids really need to know this week? What does my grade really reflect this week? And it makes us think, oh, the kids learned this or they did not learn this. Not, oh, the kids did not turn this in. The kids are late with this. It's, did the kids learn this thing?
What does grading look like now in ninth grade algebra?
So grading has really de-emphasized the daily work. We still ask students to do it. They still practice. We still provide a little bit of feedback on it, but it doesn't have a huge impact on the grade, if any, depending on the class. A lot of the grades depends on the mastery checks or the quizzes that we give at the end of the week. And the key part of that is that kids, if they are not successful, if they don't do as well as they want to the first time, they can always retake it later and improve their grade that way.
Ted Cuevas, another teacher who we had on the podcast, talks about grading like they do it in Scouts. It's like getting a badge.
Uh-huh.
And the point is that you're demonstrating your mastery of it. And when that happens is when that happens. All right, so you have the retakes. Retakes are one of those things that I think sound really, really good, but anybody who's taught has this fear of like, well, is every single student just going to be trying to do retakes in the last 3 days of the semester?
So retakes are one of the big pushback points. Whenever I suggest like this grading system, this grading reform to people, teachers often push back with, how am I going to do all these retakes? I think the structure of the retakes, the structure of the assessments is a big part of it. But a lot of teachers are used to doing a big unit test with like 50 questions and all these different kinds of questions at the end of the marking period. And then you're like, how do you retake that? And I agree, that's really difficult. So one way you manage that is to create your assessments so that they're shorter and more manageable for you and the students, so that it's not as big of a lift for you or the students when they want to improve a particular aspect of their learning. And then to your question, do students do this? Yes, there are always students who will wait till the last minute. But the goal is for all our on the fence kids to realize this is a lot of work. If I wait till the last minute and try to learn everything last minute, it's going to be really difficult. So over time, eventually, hopefully, they'll say to themselves, I should just get this right the first time. I should do it the best I can right now so that I don't have to worry about it later.
Okay, but Sandy and Sunny, I want you to level with me. Are you doing more work as teachers now that you've added retakes?
I'd say I'm definitely doing more work. I'm grading twice as many, depending on the test. Like if it's a particularly tough unit or tough few lessons that I'm testing on, then yes, there's going to be a lot of kids that want to do retakes, and I have time during the class to do retakes. So there's going to be more students that would want to take the opportunity to do it, as opposed to if I say come at lunch or come after school to do it, I get fewer students. But for the retakes, I'm not asking them to retake the entire page. So each page for me has like 3 different skills. For example, like this past week, the first skill was to identify y-intercepts in different representations, and the second skill is to identify slopes in different representations. So if students are able to score well on identifying y-intercepts, then when they're retaking, they're just retaking identifying slope. And so that second time I'm grading goes a lot faster because the students are just focusing on the skills that they're weak in and that they're getting better at.
Got it.
I would also say that it may be more work, but I think it's much more effective work. Whereas before, we're using a lot of time to grade completion work that doesn't actually tell the kids whether they learned or not. Now we're spending more time grading work that actually communicates learning to the students. So while it is more work, I think it's more effective and more valuable for the students to understand this rather than to see if they completed an assignment and turned it on the time. Also, another complaint about retakes is that, like you said, students will come in at the last minute and try to do everything. I often tell teachers to put a hurdle in there, put an obstacle, put a checkpoint. So yes, kids will come in and try to take a test again and again and again without any further preparation, and of course they're going to do poorly. So what we need to do is set some kind of barrier, like show me that you practice or tell me what you've learned, so that when they come and take this retake, they're actually prepared for it and not just coming in cold again, so they can do well this time.
I think, Sunny and Sandy, there's another aspect of what you're doing differently now, and I think that's how you're naming assignments and using gradebooks as a way to communicate. You said that was one of the pain points that got you into this work. How do your gradebooks look differently now, and how are you using them as communication tools for students, families, and for colleagues?
So if we use the Scout example again, you don't get a merit badge for I participated in the third session of camp. You don't do that, but we do it all the time as teachers. We put assignments in like I participated in this or I turned this on time. So now that our assignments are like merit badges, is like I can solve two-step equations or I can use the distributive property. That makes it more accessible for the students, the advocates, the parents, other teachers to be like, oh, this is what you need to work on. Let's work on this, as opposed to, I don't know what this assignment is. You just need to turn it in. You just need to go to class. So we can be very specific and targeted in our interventions for improvement.
One of the entry points to this work was a practice that we called Gradebook settings audit, where we looked across the back end of everybody's gradebooks in the Gradebook software and took an inventory of what settings people had in place. And so some of the types of settings that Sunny and Sandy and I looked at were things that related to like how many categories did they have in their gradebook? Were they using weighting? Did it look like folks were grading homework or participation? What percentage of the grade was composed of assessments? And so by making visible that variation, we were able to see some of what might be patterns that we could address in conversation with folks on the team. So I'm curious, Sunny and Sandy, like what were some of the things that you remember when we first took that peek behind the curtain looking at the system of grading through the gradebook audit?
What I noticed was that if you have 7 different teachers, 7 different classes, you will probably have 7 different grading systems. Every teacher does it differently, and this can be really overwhelming for everybody involved. It's very hard to figure out what the impact of a single assignment is, even if the grading software says a certain thing. So that was one of my focuses, that everybody should simplify their gradebook. Whatever that means to you, simplify it so that you understand what's happening and the students can understand what's happening. And that's one of the drives that we used when we fixed our Algebra 1 gradebooks or improved our Algebra 1 gradebooks, is to simplify and make it more meaningful for the students.
How does algebra class feel different now?
I would say that, like, since I've changed the way I list assignments in gradebooks, or I list assessments or learning goals in gradebooks, and really not count the assignment for anything, it's really like a whole practice shift. Like, I use these grades not only to like direct students on what to practice, but also on how I arrange the seating chart, for example, because I really hate making seating charts. But now I click on the grade so that it's sort by grade. And I would really put all the students with their low grades in front of me, in front of the classroom, so that I could be closer to them, be able to access them faster and check their work faster. When a student asks for certain help, I go, have you asked your classmates? Because during our retakes in class, I point out which student did well on which skill or which topic. And I would ask the students to, well, go to this person to ask them how they do it, because I'm only one and there's 30 of you. So they know what to do. You should really get them to help you out. And I say the same thing to the people who know what to do. Like, you know what to do. Help somebody else that's not on that list that would need your help.
One of the shifts I wanted when I started was kids come at the end. They're like, what can I pull out of my backpack to get my grade from this F to a C or a B? And that was really irritating. I wanted to change the question from what can I do to what learning can I show you? It's still in progress, but I feel like some students understand that better. They're like, okay, it's not about the papers I turn in. It's about, can I show him that I know this and then I can improve my grade? So ultimately, eventually, students in my class will be like, I want to get a B. This means I need to show proficiency in most of the things in this class. It's not about the paper I turn in.
Final question. For a school that's hearing this and thinking, I want to change our grading practices, I want grading to feel like it is an indication of learning and a tool for learning, what should they do to get started?
I will look for opportunities to create a coalition of the willing. I know Amanda has used that term before. If there's somebody else, even like one other teacher that's like, I have questions about this. I don't like what I'm doing. I think that's a chance for you guys to try something together.
I've thought about this question a lot, and this does not answer the entire question because there are so many supports that go with it. But basically, do more assessments. I think if teachers do more regular, shorter assignments, then a lot of questions will come up, like how do I make this effective, or how do I show this in the gradebook? But all those questions are answerable once you start doing assessments. If you want to look at your gradebook and think to yourself, is this effective? Is this reflect learning? Ask yourself that. Does this assignment reflect learning? Can I see that the student learned in this assignment? Or is it just a reflection of whether they turned it in on time? So overall, I would say do more assessments so the students and you know what they're learning. And when you put things in the gradebook, think about, is this helpful from a learning perspective? Is this going to help them learn this content better? Or is it just to let them know that they complied with your request?
I think those are great tips for folks getting started working on their own grading. And I think that's awesome. From an improvement perspective, trying to think about how can we catalyze some change across an entire team or an entire school. I think some lessons to draw from Sunny and Sandy's story are, how helpful it was at the beginning to make that variation visible in how folks are using their gradebooks through either the gradebook audits that we talked about, looking at the back-end settings, or through Sunny's activity of putting up anonymous progress reports and having people dissect and analyze them and guess the grade. Making that variability visible for folks seemed to be an incredible entry point to conversations on the team. And sometimes even just making the variation visible was a call to action for teachers to change something. And I think another thing that we discovered is that using the electronic gradebook, there's a lot of barriers, like technological barriers. Sometimes people think that their gradebook is set up one way, but they've clicked some settings or chosen to do a certain weighting or certain categories, and their intentions aren't really reflected in the final math. And so sometimes what we think someone might be trying to do intentionally with their grading, that isn't the case at all. They just need some support in learning how to use the electronic gradebook settings and really make those settings reflect their intentions. So those are a few things that I think are really important lessons to draw from this story. And of course, Sandy and Sunny, you all start with yourselves first. That's one of the things that I admire so much about you. You've been at this for a really long time. 2 decades in the classroom is incredibly admirable, but you're changing things up every day. You're doing it first in your classroom, you're learning what works, and then you share that impact with your colleagues. And I think that's just such an incredible testament to teacher leadership and the role that it can play in improvement work.
When I ask people to do things, when I have conversations with people, I try not to be like, you need to do this because this is the right way to do it. You need to do this because the literature says to do this. I'm saying you should consider doing this because it will improve student learning. I just want to help students learn better. I want you to be able to help students learn better, and I want to support that. So my goal is never to impose anything. It's to improve student learning. I think that if you're going to go into this work, that's what your focus has to be.
Sunny wouldn't say it, so we can say it. I think a really big tip for doing this work is to find the right champion. And I think in Sunny, we found quite a champion of someone who's always curious, who's always thinking about how to make things better, who has a bit of an independent streak, like I could figure that out. I could find a better way to do that. And who isn't, afraid to roll up his sleeves and get into some really tough conversations with folks. So find that champion, help folks ignite that fire, because that's how we're going to learn the things that we need to learn.
There's one other thing, and I don't know how you might incorporate it or at all, but Sunny has used AI to make some music that has to do with grading and learning as well.
The grading song has taken on a life of its own in our network. I don't know if Sunny even knows this. People love it, but it really has made an impact in kind of spreading the key point, the key message that grades should reflect learning.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And we will play out this episode with Sunny's grading song.
Teachers, when thinking about grading, remember this one thing. Grades should reflect learning. Grades should reflect learning. Does the assignment show student understanding? Can you see the student's mastery? Would you bet money they are making? Teachers, when thinking about grading, remember one thing. Grades should reflect learning. Grades should reflect learning. If the assignment only shows you if they practiced or if they completed the assignment or if they participated in the discussion, maybe don't use it. Teachers, when thinking about grading, remember this one thing. Grades should reflect learning. Grades should reflect learning. Teachers, when thinking about grading, remember this one thing.
High Tech High Unboxed is hosted and edited by me, Alec Patton. Our theme music is by Brother Herschel, though the music you're hearing right now was composed by Sunny Chan with the help of some AI. Huge thanks to Sunny, Sandy, and Amanda for this conversation. You can find information about the Breakthrough Success Community and the National Summit for Improvement in Education in our show notes. Thanks for listening.